Knowing what you know now, what would you do different?
With regard to the business.
Anything?
Well, I think I would probably have spent a bit less time in investment banking.
Okay, interesting.
Uh, I think, I've seen a lot of people follow a similar career path without putting themselves through 4 years of 18-hour day working days for 7 days a
Yeah,
week.
yeah, there
And
is.
I think that was a lot.
Yeah, I have friends that were in that market, and it's definitely a burnout. It's a real burnout process, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, there were aspects of the job I really, really liked, and
Yeah,
it's a fantastic industry and super exciting and interesting.
very fast.
But I worked just like absolutely crazy hours, and I put my job over my health and my family and everything
Yeah,
because I had to. And I think I realised that I probably could have got to where I have done, maybe without quite so many hours.
yeah. No, I don't know. I think you're. I think it's a credit to yourself and your husband to walk in and get a 500,000 investment on a pitch deck. But, you know, you don't get that without the tools in the background, and maybe we all had to get some scars on our back in order to sort of see the woods from the trees and have a better vision of what exactly a good life looks like. And maybe that's an important lesson in itself. That we maybe have to go through a bit of trauma in order to what would you do knowing what you know now? What would you do different?
I would have saved more money. I remember I had my first car and the payment was maybe $400 a month. So I paid it off, and then I said, okay, now I need to start saving money. And I started putting $100 a month, into a mutual fund or something. And then obviously I drank $300 a month. Maybe I could have just drank $200 a month. I'd still be doing what I'm doing, I think, but maybe doing a little less of it, or maybe charging a little less of it. But it really goes to the root of our entire conversation today about having a long view. And when we talk about the contractors, right, are you paying yourself first? And if
Yeah,
you can't pay yourself, then your business is failing. And like, if you want to pay yourself a salary and a profit, however you want to take money out of the business, but if
yeah,
you provide for your economic future, your business is failing. So when I was 22, 23, 24, I wasn't really thinking about those things.
yeah. You
But
were Monday
that's
to Friday.
and Friday and Saturday nights, actually. But that's, if I had to go back and quote do it again,
Yeah,
I would have been a better saver initially. All the life experiences I had, the job changes, etc. Look, yeah, there's probably a situation or two, but every single one of them taught me something that
yeah.
now enables me to sit here and do what I do. So I don't know if I would second guess that, but I certainly would have saved a little bit more along the way.
Brilliant. Knowing what you know now, what would you do different? In general, it doesn't have to be in business. It could be a life question.
Well, okay, so let's do a business and life then. From a business standpoint, there are a handful of scenarios that I would like to relive where I could have been fairer. And also there's a few scenarios where I'd like to relive so I could stick my head above the parapet, where I effectively in that moment didn't have the stones to raise my voice and say, actually, I'm not comfortable with that. In terms of like where I was receiving a mandate, like this is what we're going to do with this subcontractor. I wish I could go back and relive that, because I'm quite a different person now than I was then. And we all
Yeah,
have our regrets. But so I think there's a series of instances I think where that would apply. And from a personal life standpoint, I would have liked to have learned the superpower of detachment at a younger age. And what I mean, the superpower of detachment, it's something that I think we all we can all lay hold of, which is basically it's a phrase. It came from a Jocko Willink podcast. I think that detachment is a superpower, because what it does is it allows you to think with a clear mind, and it allows you to stop making, me anyway, to make emotional decisions that probably later on afterwards I wish I could actually relive that moment and make a much more sound decision in that moment. And I think that actually borders into business as well,
yeah,
because if you do learn how to be detached, and it's interesting as well, because there's one particular podcast I recall listening to where it was Jocko Willing podcast actually, where he was saying that to learn the art of detachment, it's knowing how to pair what are your classic tells when you're getting emotional. So maybe your heart rate increases, maybe
yeah,
your palms get a bit sweaty, maybe you get a bit hot under the collar. It
yeah,
might be all of the above. If you can start to pair those classic tells that you have, um, that I'm getting emotional to I need to detach. It's wonderfully effective, because as soon as you have that, almost like that paired association in your mind where I'm starting to get emotional and I need to detach, it becomes a knee-jerk mechanism to segue into detaching, standing back and be like, what's actually a good, sound, rational decision to make here? And by drifting away from the wall of emotion, that's inside you, and thinking with a clear head. I wish I could have learned that lesson at a much younger age.
Yeah. Knowing what you know now, what would you do different, Tom O'Toole?
I would have tried early on in my management career not to do so much myself and ask for more help. I think I was a bit of a lone ranger. I converted over to kind of running sites very quickly. So when I was 23, I was running a complex flat, kind of 23 flats cut and carve in Pimlico, and it was great, and I loved it and all the rest of it, but I wasn't really very good at asking for help, and I think I took a lot of stress on board, and I didn't, my management style was different back then. I think I would have showed far less empathy to people, and I kind of maybe wasn't listening as much. I was more of the get it done kind of guy.
Yeah.
And I think it served me well in some ways, because I was decisive and I made decisions, and people liked that about me during that phase, but it didn't have any long-term future. I couldn't be that same person running a business. I don't think anybody would follow me into the trenches. So I think that's kind of the big, and that kind of, I think, held me back for a while, and asking for help a bit earlier was a big thing.
It reminds me of a very astute, experienced business guy that I met when I was going into business, and I asked him, a bit of advice, like in summary, what would you advise me? And he says, use the 3 Ds, Gavin. And I said, what's the 3 Ds? He said, decide, delegate, and disappear. Knowing what you know now, what would you do different in life?
Yeah, it's a great question. Everything, right? Because
start all over again.
Because I'm so much more knowledgeable about the whole journey now than I was then. I'd probably change the whole lot, right?
Yeah.
I'd probably be able to do it much quicker, much cheaper. Wouldn't have hired those 2 people. Would have hired that type of prof.
Yeah.
Everything. It would be completely different, right? So I think anyone that's answers that question, like, I got most of it right. Yeah. It's bullshit, isn't it? What we know now versus where we started. If it's not different, but you've learned nothing.
Yeah.
So I've learned so much about the differences between running a traditional construction company versus the difference between running technology companies. Like, I completely underestimated how different that is. How different the mindset is, dealing with investors. That's all new, right? Before, it was a family business. We ran a family business, and the money came in, went 2 ways. Myself, brother, right? Easy. Now in this environment, you're dealing with large corporates, you're dealing with investors, you're dealing with quarterly reports, board meetings, all that type of stuff. If one thing that I'd probably take away is how I completely underestimated the body of work that goes alongside running the business that I probably didn't realize at the time. And that's probably the only thing I'd look to, is maybe educate myself a bit deeper into what was actually involved in that, because I probably went into that a little bit blind now looking back.
And do you use mentors, or do you have someone that you can soundboard off?
Huge.
Yeah, okay.
Absolutely huge. Pretty much I'd say I've got mentors for all different aspects of what we're trying to do. If it's a technology question, I've got someone to pick up the phone to. If it's a breaking into a new market question, I've got someone to pick up the phone to. So, one of the things that I think I would have done well at the point in time is making sure I had good people around me, people that have been on this journey before, not people that, have read the book about it, people that have done it and come out the other side. So I have a sort of rule of thumb when it comes to taking advice, is probably only take advice from people who have achieved what you're actually trying to achieve, rather than people that have, maybe read the books about it and all that type of stuff. So I would have been and still am, by the way, still always looking for other people that have done it, been there, done it, and trying to connect to those people. And some of them are, investing in the business, and that's great. Some of them aren't, and some of them are just happy to give their time and give back to people that are coming behind them as well. So mentors, absolutely huge on mentors.
Brilliant.